What if you're not lazy? What if you're not broken? What if you're not lost? Not in the way you think. What if what you're feeling isn't weakness, but spiritual fragmentation? The slow, silent splintering of the soul, not because of one single event, but because of a pattern of invasion, of manipulation, of being emotionally used, energetically drained, spiritually overexposed. Not all at once, but slowly, bit by bit, until one day you wake up and ask, where did I go? You still function, you still show up, you still perform, but you feel like a version of yourself, a voice with no center, a body with no command, a spirit without its own coordinates. That's not dramatic, that's real. And in this episode, we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna name something that most people feel, but don't know how to describe. Because spiritual attacks aren't always loud. They don't always come with rituals or threats. Sometimes they come through repeated emotional violation, constant energetic entanglement, years of saying yes when you meant no, 1,000 tiny betrayals of your own intuition in the name of love, and eventually you don't just feel tired, you feel disassembled, you can't focus, you can't feel, you can't even fully want anything. You're not fine, you're fragmented. The Stoics wouldn't have used the word soul fragmentation, but they warned us repeatedly about the slow erosion of internal sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." But what happens when you're not sure where the you is anymore? This episode isn't about blame. It's not about becoming paranoid. It's about becoming whole again. About seeing how the pieces were scattered and learning how to call them back, because you may have been shattered slowly, but piece by piece, you will return. Let's begin. The invisible breaking, when your soul fractures quietly without blood or noise. Not all breaking makes a sound. Sometimes it's the absence of sound, the numb stillness that creeps in where your voice used to be. No one sees it. No one claps their hands over their mouth in shock. There's no wound to dress, no wreckage to point at. But inside, you know something cracked. And not just once. Little by little, with every boundary ignored, every instinct overridden, every version of yourself silenced to keep the peace. You fragmented. Not in rage, but in resignation. Not in collapse, but in quiet daily erosion. This is what makes soul fragmentation so dangerous. It doesn't feel like violence. It feels like survival. You say yes to avoid tension. You stay silent to avoid conflict. You shift shape to avoid abandonment. And every time, you lose a little piece of your center. But because there's no explosion, no obvious trauma, you don't name it as damage. You call it growth, maturity, being the bigger person. But beneath the diplomacy, you are disappearing. The Stoics understood that internal decay is more dangerous than external attack. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Because protecting your soul often means disappointing someone else's script for you. But when you've been invaded gently, when the attack came through charm and closeness, you don't call it invasion, you call it love. And that's how the spell begins. So let me ask you, do you feel like you're performing more than living? Do your reactions feel detached from your actual self? Do you feel stretched thin? Not from doing too much, but from being too many things to too many people. That's fragmentation. And fragmentation doesn't always scream. It whispers, I don't know who I am here. I don't feel safe telling the truth. I don't even know what I want anymore. But here's the hope. Just as you were shattered slowly, you can rebuild slowly. And the first step is recognition. This segment is not to alarm you. It's to confirm what your soul has already been trying to tell you. Something was taken, and I'm ready to take it back. Not by rage, not by retreat, but by recollection. And once you name the break, you can begin calling yourself home. The first crack, losing trust in your own voice. The soul rarely fractures all at once. It begins with a subtle silence inside you. A small moment when your intuition whispers something and you override it. Not because you didn't hear it, but because you didn't trust it. You paused, you second-guessed, you told yourself, I'm probably overreacting. They didn't mean it that way. Let's not make this a thing. And just like that, your inner voice, the most sacred compass you have, took a step back. Not because it was wrong, but because it wasn't welcome. That is the first crack. The moment you stop choosing what's true because you're afraid of losing what's familiar. The moment someone else's comfort becomes more important than your conviction. And once that crack forms, it doesn't close on its own. It grows. Every time you swallow your words to avoid tension, every time you laugh when something hurt, every time you say yes while something inside you is screaming, please don't, you become quieter, not externally, but in the places that matter most. Your instincts, your awareness, your will. Marcus Aurelius warned, never regard something as doing you good if it makes you betray a trust. What if that trust was the one between you and yourself? The Stoics didn't define betrayal only in terms of others. They defined it as the fracture of character. And losing trust in your own voice is the beginning of self-fragmentation. Because if you can't trust your thoughts, your feelings, your sense of what's right, you start outsourcing all your decisions to whoever speaks with more certainty than you do. And manipulators love that moment. They sense the silence inside you. They fill it with suggestion. And you follow, not because you're foolish, but because your inner authority has gone dim. So let me ask you, when was the last time you said what you meant without diluting it? When was the last time you made a decision without checking how someone else might feel about it? When was the last time you felt clear, not just agreeable? If you can't remember, that's not you failing. That's the sign of a voice that's been politely pushed aside for too long. But here's the truth, your voice isn't gone, it's waiting. And the moment you decide to hear it again, to trust its direction, even if no one else claps for it, you begin repairing the first crack. The soul doesn't need noise to heal, it just needs to be heard. So pause, ask, what have I been ignoring that's been trying to guide me? And when you hear it, no matter how faint, say, you were right, I'm listening now. Energetic trauma. When attacks leave you spiritually scattered. Not all trauma leaves a scar you can point to. Some of it leaves you dispersed, scattered across timelines, relationships, memories you can't fully process. You walk around intact on the outside, but inside, you're in pieces. One part of you still frozen in the moment you were shamed for being honest. Another still trying to fix the person who drained you in the name of love. Another still walking on eggshells, hoping you won't trigger another emotional explosion. This is energetic trauma, a fracture in the soul field caused by repeated spiritual invasion. What does it look like? You feel numb in situations that used to move you. You forget your values the moment certain people enter the room. You hear your own voice, but it feels far away, like it belongs to someone else. You aren't broken, but you are fragmented. Because every time someone crossed your boundary and you didn't know how to defend it, every time someone manipulated your compassion and you thought staying was the right thing, every time you betrayed your own intuition to maintain the illusion of peace, a piece of you drifted. Not gone, just waiting. The Stoics didn't talk about energy fields, but they were obsessed with integrity, the wholeness of the inner life. Epictetus said, it is not events that disturb us, but our opinion about them. And here's what trauma does. It changes your opinion about yourself. It tells you you can't be trusted. You're not safe to feel. Your instincts are dangerous, and you believe it. Until your soul stops coming forward because it no longer feels welcomed in your own body. This is what the spiritually fragmented life becomes. You chase external clarity because you no longer trust your inner signal. You over-explain because you're no longer sure your reality is valid. You seek safety in silence, not because it brings peace, but because it prevents conflict. And slowly, your essence becomes scattered across survival strategies. That's the cost of energetic trauma, not chaos, but quiet disassembly. But here's the hope. What was scattered can be gathered. What was frozen can be thawed. What was silenced can speak again. The Stoic way back isn't to power through, it's to begin noticing. Where did I stop showing up as myself? Which versions of me are still waiting to come home? What part of me is still obeying a story I no longer believe in? Ask with gentleness, answer without judgment, because every fragment is a message, and every moment you pause to listen, you begin calling yourself back, and that's how you heal. Not in one step, but in sequence, not through force, but through soul-level permission to be whole again. Signs your soul fragmented, how it feels to be half here, half gone. You don't always know you fragmented because fragmentation doesn't feel like breaking. It feels like drifting. You get things done, you answer messages, you smile when you need to, but something's off. You forget what you believe in. You hesitate when you used to speak freely. You say, I'm fine, but it doesn't even sound like your own voice anymore. That's not fatigue, that's soul separation. You're not all here, and the pieces that left, they didn't leave with drama. They left quietly every time you overrode your truth to maintain peace. Here are some of the signs. 1, you feel like a background actor in your own life. You're showing up, but not arriving. Your words are right, your face looks fine. But it's all performance. You can't remember the last time you felt real in a moment. 2, you don't trust your yes or your no. You say what feels safest, what will cause the least disruption, what they want to hear. But after, you feel hollow, not because the words were wrong, but because they weren't yours. 3, you're emotionally responsive, but internally muted. You cry when others cry. You absorb their urgency. But inside, nothing moves. You're not heartless, you're overextended. 4, you keep asking questions with answers you already know. Am I overreacting? Maybe it's just me. Do I owe them more? You're not seeking truth, you're seeking permission to feel what you already feel. That's fragmentation. 5, you miss yourself but can't explain what that means. You think back to who you were when you laughed louder, moved with ease, trusted your instincts, and now everything is measured, muted, managed. You're not lost, you're scattered. The Stoics spoke of the danger of living externally. Marcus Aurelius warned, be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm. But you can't be the cliff if you've handed out pieces of yourself to everyone who needed a version of you that wasn't inconvenient. You've been chipped away, gently. And now you're wondering why you feel like a shape but not a substance. That's not personality collapse. It's spiritual diffusion. And it's reversible. Because every part of you that left it is waiting for one thing, to be chosen again. To be listened to be honored, without shame. You don't need to find your soul. You need to call it back. And that begins with telling the truth. I am here, but not all of me, and I'm ready to come home. The Stoic mirror, seeing the fracture without shame. It's one thing to realize you're fragmented. It's another to look at the pieces and not feel ashamed. Because most people, when they finally see how far they've drifted, how often they've abandoned themselves, they collapse into guilt. Why didn't I see it sooner? How could I let it happen? Maybe I'm just weak. But this shame, it's just another layer of the spell. Because shame keeps you staring at the wound instead of reaching for the remedy. The Stoics didn't deny pain, they examined it. Marcus Aurelius didn't ask, why am I broken? He asked, what is this made of? What can I control, and how do I return to center? This is the Stoic mirror, a space where you look directly at what's been distorted without flinching or fleeing, where you say, yes, I disappeared, yes, I overgave, yes, I forgot myself. But you say it without judgment, because judgment anchors you to the past. While observation, that's what frees you from it. Here's how to hold the Stoic mirror. Bullshit my Gabriel. Utters without narrating. Don't call it failure. Call it a moment. Don't call it stupid. Call it an unguarded opening. You're not labeling, you're locating. 2, separate the wound from the self. You are not the cracks, you are the container. You are not what broke, you are what can rebuild. 3, speak to yourself like someone worth protecting, Would you shame a child for trusting too much? Then don't shame yourself for being an open-hearted. Say, I see you, I know how you got here, and I'm with you now. That's not indulgence, that's reintegration. Because healing can't happen in a space where the soul still thinks it deserves to be punished. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus said, you are not your thoughts, you are the observer of them. So when you look in the mirror, don't confuse the chaos you've lived through with the character you still carry. Yes, they shattered you slowly, but now you're the one holding the mirror. Not to judge what you see, but to begin gathering it, piece by piece, truth by truth, until the reflection no longer asks, what happened to me? But affirms, I'm coming back. The quiet return, gathering the parts of you that were left behind. Not all healing is heroic. Some of it is subtle, private, almost invisible. It doesn't look like a breakthrough. It looks like a breath. It doesn't announce itself with transformation. It whispers, I'm still here. That's how the soul returns, quietly, one piece at a time, one truth at a time, not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped running from the parts of you that were left behind. The Stoics called this recollection, the act of returning to what matters after distraction, delusion, or despair. Marcus Aurelius described it as returning to reason. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. But sometimes your soul isn't dyed, it's scattered. And recollection isn't just mental, it's energetic. So how do you begin gathering the parts of you that were lost? You don't chase them, you invite them. You say, to the part of me that gave too much, I forgive you. To the part that stayed silent, I understand you. To the part that disappeared to survive, come home, we need you now. This isn't fantasy, it's energetic recall. It's the reverse of fragmentation, because you didn't lose yourself in one moment. You lost yourself in micro-compromises. So healing won't be one grand reclaiming. It will be small rituals, saying no without apology, laughing without checking who's watching, moving at your own rhythm, not theirs. And when guilt rises, and as it will, you greet it with compassion, not compliance. Ask yourself, what parts of me still flinch before I speak? What versions of me only show up when I feel safe, and why? What did I silence in myself just to be loved? Because each of those answers is a breadcrumb. Each is a door back to yourself. You're not rebuilding a brand, you're returning to a foundation. You don't need to become someone new. You need to remember who you were before the world taught you to scatter. And when those pieces come back, you don't rush to fit them together. You let them rest. You say, you've waited long enough. You're safe here now. We go forward as one, reforging the self, integrity as spiritual armor. You don't glue a soul back together. You reforge it, piece by piece, moment by moment, not with perfection, but with presence. And the forge, it's not a therapist's office. It's not a retreat. It's not even this video. The forge is your daily decision to live in integrity, to no longer outsource your choices, to no longer barter with your boundaries, to no longer shapeshift to avoid being misunderstood. Because fragmentation happened in subtle disloyalties to the self, and wholeness begins with the sacred refusal to be out of alignment, even when it's inconvenient. This is where Stoicism becomes your shield. Not coldness, not distance, but consistency with your own soul. Marcus Aurelius wrote, just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter. That's not detachment from life. That's devotion to integrity. So what does reforging look like? 1, you say what you mean, even when it makes things awkward. No more, it's fine when it's not. No more, whatever you want when you have a preference. Every true sentence is a stroke of the hammer. 2, you keep small promises to yourself, ruthlessly. If you say you'll rest, you rest. If you say you'll move, you move. If you say no more, you stop answering. This is how you seal the cracks from the inside out. 3, you tolerate discomfort, but not distortion. You let people be disappointed. You let energy shift. You let things fall away. Because what you're protecting is more important than what you're preserving. And what you're protecting is not just your time, it's your essence. It's the part of you that's finally learning. If being accepted requires self-abandonment, it's a trap. Reforging the self doesn't mean you become untouchable. It means you become unshapable by people who don't live by the same inner code. The Stoic lives by that code, not to be impressive, but to be whole. Seneca put it best, "He who is brave is free." And bravery in the modern world is refusing to negotiate with what weakens you. So ask yourself, where do I still bend to be palatable? What truth have I polished so much it no longer feels true? What would it look like to stop managing perception and start honoring presence? You don't need to wear armor. You become it, not hardened, but held together by what is real, what is true, and what no longer gets to be compromised. That's not a personality shift. That's spiritual restoration. Living whole again. How to stay spiritually integrated in a fragmenting world. So you've started the return. You've called the pieces back. You've stopped explaining your clarity. You've stepped off the stage where you once performed to be palatable. But now comes the real test. How do you stay whole in a world designed to fragment you again? Because life will keep tugging. People will still mirror old patterns. Emotional hooks will still show up in new costumes. The pressure to soften, bend, blur, it doesn't vanish. Which is why spiritual integration must become a daily practice, not just a one-time revelation. Stoicism gives us that practice, not by telling us to isolate, but by teaching us to live with interior governance. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them." In other words, you don't have to control the world, only your agreement with it. So how do you live whole again? 1. Audit your inputs. Who do you let speak into your soul? What conversations leave you heavy? What content reopens the old fractures? What people mean well but pull you off center? Spiritual integration begins with curation. 2. Protect your rituals of stillness. Silence is not a luxury, it's maintenance. Make space for the quiet that reminds you. You exist beyond reaction. You are not required to respond instantly. You are allowed to feel fully before you act clearly. First, notice what fragments you and interrupt it early. Do you dim when certain people enter the room? Do you shift posture, language, tone? That's not over-awareness, that's spiritual sensitivity. Don't shame it, observe it, and reroute. 4. Return to self-trust. Often. Every day, you'll be offered new scripts, who you should be, how you should speak, what's too much. But you've already lived what it means to lose yourself. So now you honor the signal. Even if no one else agrees, even if you're misunderstood, even if you're the only one who knows it's the right choice. Integration doesn't mean perfection. It means you no longer leak energy into things that cost you your alignment. It means you say, "I'm here," and mean all of you. Your mind, your boundaries, your essence. No more partial living, no more splitting to fit. This isn't about spiritual performance. It's about presence without dilution. And once you've lived that way, even for a moment, you'll never go back to being scattered on command, because you've tasted the wholeness that can only come from uncompromised selfhood. And now you protect it. They didn't destroy you. They just broke what you hadn't protected yet. Now you do. You weren't destroyed. Yes, you were scattered. Yes, you were stretched beyond yourself. Yes, pieces of your soul were silenced, left behind, overwritten. But you weren't erased. Because the truth is, they didn't break you because they were powerful. They broke what you hadn't yet learned to protect. Your intuition, your will, your voice, your alignment. But now you see it. Not with blame, not with self-pity, with sovereignty. The Stoics knew that life wouldn't spare us pain, but they taught us how to live so that even in pain, we remain whole. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This fragmentation, it wasn't the end of you. It was the revelation of what you still needed to claim. What was open, what was vulnerable, what was sacred but unguarded. And now you guard it, not with walls, but with discernment, not with coldness, but with clarity, not with fear, but with structure. You've looked at the pieces, you've gathered them back, you've reforged something stronger than what was shattered. Not harder, truer. So here's what I ask of you. If this episode names something you've been feeling in silence, comment below, I return to myself. Let that be your turning point, not to become someone new, but to remember who you were before the fractures, before the conditioning, before the soft spell of compliance. And if this brought you clarity, like the video, share it with someone who's been quietly falling apart while appearing perfectly fine. Subscribe for more Stoic clarity, soul-level strength, and spiritual reclamation. Until next time, walk whole, choose slowly, trust deeply, but only from alignment. Because yes, they shattered you slowly, but now you rise on purpose. And this time you are not missing.